I'm Milwaukee Historian John Gurda, standing right here at center ice at the BMO Harris Bradley Center with a bobblehead of Teddy Roosevelt the Milwaukee Admirals are giving away this Saturday night. There is a Milwaukee connection, and that requires a little storytelling. Teddy served almost 2 full terms as president, beginning under William McKinley. He was the vice president, and McKinley was assassinated in Buffalo, New York. So after 6 months in the VP's office, Teddy became the president and filled out that term and won a term of his own. Then he sat out a term when William Howard Taft, who was kind of his anointed successor, was president. Then there was a split among the Republicans between the stalwarts and the progressives, and Teddy led the progressive faction and went on the campaign trail in 1912 as a third-party candidate running against Woodrow Wilson, the Democrat, and Taft, the Republican. And he came to Milwaukee on October 14th, 1912 as part of that campaign tour. He stayed at a place called the Gilpatrick Hotel, which stood on 4th Street, where the Hyatt Regency is today. And he was scheduled to give his speech at the Milwaukee Auditorium that evening after a dinner at the hotel. And when he was going out to his car, he stepped in and kind of waved his hat to the crowd. And a man named John Schrank, who had worked as a bartender in New York City and had been stalking Roosevelt for a month all around the East Coast, came up to Roosevelt and at nearly point-blank range fired a revolver at Roosevelt. The bullet went into his chest, the right side of his chest, and lodged against his 4th rib. And Roosevelt said to one of his aides, "Henry, he pinked me," and almost disbelief that someone had shot him. He staggered but did not fall and insisted, despite his doctor's recommendations, to go onto the auditorium. He said, "This may be the last speech I give, but I will give it." So they go all of 2 blocks to the Milwaukee Auditorium, take him backstage, and only then do they see what had happened. What had happened is the bullet had penetrated a heavy overcoat, a suit coat, a vest, and then, most importantly, a 50-page speech, folded double, and then caromed off his metal glasses case, and only then did the bullet enter his body. Had there not been that rather uncanny gauntlet of obstacles, Roosevelt probably would have been a dead man. So he is bleeding, maybe not profusely, but he is bleeding, and the blood is seeping through his shirt. He insists on taking the stage, and his first line was, "I do not know whether you understand that I have just been shot." One of the most gripping lines in any presidential speech, and people expressed disbelief. He opens up his coat to reveal this blood stain seeping through his shirt. Men gasped and women fainted, but he went on for a full hour, kind of teetering at times, losing color, and his aides were around him to catch him just in case he fell, but he finished. And when the speech was over, they took him to the emergency hospital downtown and determined that the bullet was posing no great danger. It was not interfering with organs, and extracting it might be more complicated. So they put him on his train and sent him down to a specialist in Chicago. And he took 2 weeks off and went back on the campaign trail and carried that bullet with him to his grave. John Schrank, who was certifiably mad, ended his days in the Waupun prison in Wisconsin itself. But Teddy, went on to a distinguished post-presidential career and as a man of affairs. And when you think about his role in American history, certainly he was a trust buster, a reformer, someone who was a very progressive thinker, but also a man who was perhaps the most machismo president in history. Carrying that bullet with him to his grave, and the simple act of finishing that speech, talking for an hour with a bullet freshly in his chest, certainly burnished his reputation as the bull moose, kind of the man of steel.